Okay, in the previous tapes, when it came to treatment, we did all the treatments in sitting, and essentially, just to run through it quickly, we basically, for an ERSL where we want to flex and right side bend, right rotate, we brought them into this position, stabilised below, and then basically flexed like so. If it was an FRSL where we wanted to extend, right rotate, right side bend, then we put them into this position, fix and glide inferiorly. These techniques are okay, except that clinically they're very difficult to do and often not very effective. Technically, they're the correct way of doing them. So we're going to look at some techniques that are technically not as correct, but clinically more efficient. For the first one, if we look at the flexed dysfunction where we cannot get flexion on the left side, so we have an ERSL and we've determined that it is an arthrokinematic problem, then we'll bring them to their end barrier, basically by bringing them forward and right side bend and right rotate them, and then I'll come onto that posterior transverse process and basically mobilise it by pushing it forwards and upwards, like so. So if I put my thumb there, which is probably not the best idea, this is just for description, then I'll be pushing it forwards and upwards. You're better off though using your thenar eminence so that you don't injure your own thumb. It's also a little more comfortable on the patient. So I'm gliding this inferior facet of this zygapophyseal joint, the superior facet, forwards and upwards to flex this zygapophyseal joint. We can do much the same thing with extension, but in this case we'll do it with the patient in prone lying. Can you lay on your stomach for me? Let's assume that what I have is a left facet that will not extend. So I want to bring this facet into extension, and I can do this in a number of different ways. I can either slide the superior facet of the zygapophyseal joint down this way, or I can slide the inferior up and forwards this way. I can take my pick. What I want to do, though, is bring this joint into the extended position. And I can do this basically by side flexing the patient, like so, and then bringing it into extension on this side by placing a pillar underneath her there. So now this facet, this zygapophyseal joint is at its maximum range of extension available to it. And then I can think about gliding this joint. Now, as I say, I can either push the inferior vertebra up or I can push the superior vertebra down on this left side. If I want to push this up, then I will basically stabilise the superior vertebra, come onto the transverse process of the inferior and push it forwards and upwards, like so, along the plane of the joint. So this isn't a PA pressure. The plane of the joint is like so for this, okay? Or I can bring the superior one down on the inferior, in which case I'll stabilise the inferior vertebra and come onto that transverse process here and push this one basically downwards, just about parallel with the body, like so. And that will give it that slightly dorsal glide. There. Now, as I say, while these techniques are not technically correct because we're not specifying to the absolute segment, if we can get our hands over that zygapophyseal joint, then the force will, most of the force, and certainly the majority of the force, will be confined to that zygapophyseal joint to gain extension. In fact, although technically incorrect, this is the most effective way of mobilising into extension.